Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting first, and then the City Council meeting. Tonight is Monday, the 17th of May. We have a full house this evening. Our Committee of the Whole agenda, ladies and gentlemen. Item 2, approve Committee of the Whole minutes from April 19, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Alderman Marks, I believe that was?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Bruno. Any questions, any comments?
Committee of the Whole, all are present.
All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. Items of business, 3A, consider draft resolution authorizing the execution of an engineering agreement with Deutschler Engineering for sanitary sewer evaluation. Is there a motion?
Second.
Alderman Kosarog makes the motion, Alderman Bruno makes the second. Any questions or, excuse me, Stephanie?
Sure.
You have a preamble, forgive me,
I do
folks.
So in January of 2019, the City of Geneva entered a contract for fiscal year 19 through 21 with Deutschler Engineering in Aurora to evaluate the sanitary sewer system and make recommendations for improvements. Deutschler Engineering has completed a capacity management operations and maintenance plan as required in Special Condition 20 of the 2019 MPDES permit, a sewer capacity review of the future Southeast Industrial Area, a flow analysis report of the Fargo area, a river crossing flow model, sanitary sewer evaluation of the Geneva East subdivision, and subsequent improvements to the sanitary sewer system in Geneva East. Staff has been pleased with the work completed so far and desires to enter into a new contract to continue the sanitary sewer evaluation for fiscal year 22 and 23. The goals and objectives of the contract consist of completion of the facility plan update for wet weather flows, ongoing flow monitoring in areas where sanitary sewer overflows have occurred, sump pump inspections in the Geneva East subdivision, recommendations for capital improvements to improve the collection system, and condition assessments of all sanitary sewer lift stations. The contract includes a cost for fiscal year 22 at $315,160 and fiscal year 23 at $509,840. The second year of the contract would be dependent upon budgetary approval by the City Council next fiscal year. So I do believe we have Superintendent Van Gescam present with us and representatives from Deutschler Engineering if you have any additional questions.
Are there any questions from the Committee of the Whole for either our friends from Deutschler or our Superintendent, Mr. Van Gescam? Seeing none? Anticipating none? A voice vote is sufficient, ladies and gentlemen. All in favor of item 3A, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay. Fantastic. This motion has been adopted unanimously to be forwarded to the City Council. Item 3B is to consider draft resolution authorizing the execution of a plat of easement with the Forest Preserve District of Kane County. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Bruno makes the motion,
Second.
and Mr. Swanson makes the second. Ms. Dawkins.
So the Kane County Cougar Stadium is served by water from the City of Geneva. The water main feeding the stadium is owned and maintained by the city, which requires an easement. A new easement document has been developed in cooperation with the Forest Preserve District of Kane County and contains existing and recent improvements to the water system. Again, we still have Superintendent Van Gescam with us if you have any additional questions.
Questions from the committee for the superintendent? Seeing none and anticipating none? Voice vote is sufficient. On item 3B, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay. The item is adopted unanimously and forwarded to the City Council for additional discussion if necessary. Item 3C is to consider draft resolution authorizing a 3-year small government enterprise license agreement with Environmental Systems Research Institute Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $27,500 annually. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Alderman Marks makes the motion.
Second.
Alderman Bruno makes the second. Ms. Dawkins.
Okay, so the fiscal year '22 budget has funds allocated to enter into this enterprise license agreement for the city's geographical information systems, also known as GIS. The agreement provides for new and expanded capabilities to city staff, including but not limited to increasing the number of users, utility network models, and analysis tools. The agreement is for a 3-year period with an annual cost of $27,500. You may have also noticed on the questions on the agenda tonight, we do use this a lot, and then we've added over the last couple of years a lot of public-facing maps, so you can now go and look up what kind of parkway tree is in front of your house, when it was planted, what it is. You can look up who your alderman or alderwoman is. You can find out what day is trash. There's all kinds of public-facing maps that we have, but this would also enable us to do some more robust things. So with that, we do have our GIS coordinator, Mike Bledsoe, available if you have any additional questions.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Bledsoe? Any questions or comments from Mr. Bledsoe? Alderman Kosarog.
I guess I was just wondering, the 3-year part, are we positive our staff is going to use this? And is it necessary to go all in on 3 years rather than just 1 year and reevaluate? It's a pretty expensive license agreement.
Sure. Well, I've unmuted Mike so he can address that with you, but I would say we have been using Esri and GIS every year, more and more and more. So it's not something that I see going away. In fact, I see it's something that's even going to become more in our day-to-day work environment. But Mike, if you're out there, if you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes. It says in the quote information that for governments, if there's any issue with coming up with the funds, then there is a way to get out of the agreement. But we use this all the time. The expanded capabilities of the utility network is really exciting. Being able to increase the number of users, so more people throughout the city can put information out there and manage it. It's very exciting, and we will use it all the time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else from the committee? Questions from Mr. Bledsoe or Ms. Dawkins? A voice vote is sufficient, ladies and gentlemen. All those in favor of item 3C, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay. The motion has been adopted and advanced to the City Council for further discussion if necessary. Item 3D, consider draft resolution authorizing execution of the 2021 construction materials testing contract with National Soil Testing LLC of Plainfield, Illinois, in an amount not to exceed $12,701. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Bruno makes the motion,
Second.
and Mr. Swanson makes the second. Ms. Dawkins.
Thank you. So this is for the testing of construction materials for the fiscal year '22 capital improvement projects for quality assurance as it relates to testing of construction materials before construction materials are incorporated into the city projects and proper placement during constructions. 5 quotes were received and summarized in your packet. The low bid was National Soil Testing LLC. They've done this type of work for the city before and have performed satisfactorily. I believe this evening Director Babica is with us if you have any additional questions.
Any questions for Director Babica regarding item 3D? Seeing none and sensing none, all those in favor of item 3D, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay. This item has been adopted and advanced to the City Council for further discussion if necessary. Item 3E, consider draft resolution declaring surplus fire department equipment, which of course is fire department number 3. That's a joke, just in case people tuning in. That's a joke. Kosarog makes the motion,
Second.
seconded by Bruno. There is no fire station number 3, just so everybody knows. Ms. Dawkins, I will hear from the firefighters tomorrow, I'm sure.
Sure you will. So this is one you've seen before. This is really just housekeeping. So there was a list in the packet of fire department equipment that is either obsolete, has reached its end of life, broken, or otherwise not usable. The resolution for your consideration would declare this equipment as surplus and then authorize the disposal of said items. We do have Chief Antonori on the line with us if you have any additional questions. But again, we're just gradually cleaning things out, and so as we do, we bring the list here to declare surplus. So thank you.
Any questions for the chief from the committee? Seeing none and sensing none. All in favor of item 3E, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay. Item 3E has been advanced unanimously to the city council for further discussion if necessary. Item 3F, folks. Consider draft resolution authorizing the purchase of a police vehicle and associated conversion costs in an amount not to exceed $133,936. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Marks makes the motion. Second. Seconded by Kosarog. I think I dropped the S on vehicle. It should be vehicles.
I was gonna-
'cause that's gonna,
Because that's a very expensive one vehicle.
hell of a car. So,
So, again, in your packet, we've identified that the fiscal year '22 budget included funds in two different funds, the Restricted Police Fund and the Capital Equipment Fund, for the purchase of a total of 4 police vehicles, not one, 4. As detailed in the agenda packet, the vehicles to be replaced include a 2008 Chevy Impala, a 2011 Ford Crown Vic, and those would be replaced with 2022 Chevrolet Malibus, and then 2 2015 Ford Interceptor sedans with 2 2021 Ford Interceptor SUVs. Ford has discontinued making the sedans, so that's why we would go with the SUVs. The current state bid holder for the Malibus is Miles Chevrolet out of Decatur, Illinois, and the current state bid holder for the Ford Interceptor is Morrow Brothers Ford of Greenfield, Illinois. And then we do upfitting with Ultrastrobe, which takes off equipment off our old vehicles, puts it on the new vehicles and anything new we need, for a total, all in, all 4 vehicles and outfitted vehicles for $133,936. And we do have the honor of having Commander Frieders with us this evening to answer any additional questions you may have.
from the committee, any questions for Commander Frieders? Commander Frieders, are you by any chance a part-time baseball coach?
I might be.
Because you were throwing signals like that to Stephanie as she was commenting, so. Any questions at all? All in favor of item 3F, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay. Item 3F has been advanced to the city council with a unanimous vote, and if necessary, additional discussion will be held. New business and public comment, ladies and gentlemen, from the dais. Any new business anyone would like to share? Yes, sir.
So with us moving to the bridge phase and hopefully to the next phase, I was wondering where we stand with public participation via online, both here and planning and zoning and all that kind of stuff.
So while we're in the bridge phase, we still have occupancy limitations, and because we have occupancy limitations, we will continue with the hybrid meetings. Then once we move to phase 5, I don't know that a final decision's been made because it all depends what the state allows us to do as far as open meetings go, but the likelihood is then we would resume just all in-person meetings, with the caveat that council can attend virtually for those 3 reasons that you were allowed to do prior to the pandemic, which is illness, business, or family illness? Family illness. So for the next 28 days, we are still in a hybrid mode with capacity limitations of 60% occupancy.
Is there any discussion at the state level about the Open Meetings Act, about extending that?
There are several
participation?
bills out there that are looking to continue with virtual options moving forward for now and on, but none of those bills yet have passed and come out of session.
Okay.
But we're watching them because I think most communities have found that the ability to do these hybrid meetings have actually garnered more participation than just doing in person.
Exactly.
Even though we've always televised, we've never had the option to do the virtual participation.
I'm certainly hoping that we can continue that going, so thank you very much.
The audio, if you are virtual, plugging in the telephone is pretty unsatisfying, I'll say.
Well, and I would say, probably, since we have the subscription and it works well and we use it for other things, that we would likely keep that platform so that if there was an instance where one of the council members had to attend virtually because of illness or otherwise, if you want to be seen on screen if you're ill, but we would keep that option available.
Anyone else? New business? If not, I do have something brief. I'm going to ask my colleague, Ms. Dawkins, to not quite yet put on the screen, but all of you who are avid readers of business news, whether it be any business publication, but in particular of Crane's Chicago Business, may have recognized our colleague in, was it 10 days ago, in the Crane's publication identifying distinguished women in construction and design. Alderman Mayer, you were so featured. Guess what we got for you here? Check this out. It's Mike Bruno. There you go. This was in the Crane Chicago Business, a feature on Alderman Mayer. Very, very impressive. And I must admit, when I read that, I was like, oh my God, I had no idea. And how, you've been in the industry a while.
Yes, I've been in the industry since I graduated U of I in '96. So
Wow. Did you know you were going to be in here?
I did have a little advance warning.
Did you?
Yes. Yes.
That's very cool.
Thank
And
you.
how many copies of the Cranes have you received?
You know what? I haven't done that yet. I need to order one.
Yeah, you do.
I have it coming to my house, but
We were going to have it put on a plaque, but we didn't have the budget for it, so it's like,
That's okay.
well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That was really very cool. And I hope Kevin Starr will note this in this week's e-blast as well, so the entire community knows of your life outside the council, so
That's right. That's right. I keep myself busy at work
I
too.
bet you do.
Yeah.
And you're still working from home, or you kind of?
Oh no, we've been back since June last year.
Really?
So I've been going into Chicago every day since June of last year.
So, well, free parking's not bad.
Yeah, no, the parking was great and the traffic was great for a long time.
Yeah.
And now it's just not. So I'm taking the train again,
Are you really?
which everybody should start doing because it's wonderful.
Yeah. And what train do you catch in the morning?
6:37.
Is that early or late, Craig?
Yeah, there is no 6:04 now. So no,
Actually, there's no train, Craig, so,
there's a 6:37 and a 7:25, and I think that's about it.
25% capacity
Every
maybe?
hour. It's every other, well, in the morning, it's every seat, but only one person per seat. So it's kind of like a dream. I mean, you know, it's what you've always wanted.
Is what you're saying, is
yourself.
you'd like Dean to move? Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
We're very
Thank you
proud
very
of you.
much.
That's awesome. A motion to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting would be in order. Alderman Swanson makes that motion. All in favor of adjourning the committee of the whole meeting, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. We'll take just a minute, folks, to transition over to the council meeting. Microphones are off. Ladies and gentlemen, I proudly call tonight's city council meeting to order. I kindly ask our city administrator to please take the roll call.
Bruno?
Here.
Burkhart? Here. Ruby? Here. Caven?
Here.
Kilberg?
Here.
Kosarog?
Here.
Maladra?
Here.
Marks?
Here.
Mayor? Swanson?
Here.
We are all present this evening. We begin our council meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like to ask our distinguished guests, whose proclamation we are reading this evening, to please lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our first order of business tonight is to proclaim June 4th, 2021 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. I have a proclamation I'd like to read. It's important, I believe, that we read this. And then we have some guests who are with us as well, and I'd love to invite you up to the podium if you'd like to say anything. So if you could keep it to an hour or so, that'd be great. declaring the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the city of Geneva. Whereas every day, more than 100 Americans are killed by gun violence alongside more than 230 who are shot and wounded, and on average there are more than 13,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people in either high-income countries, and gun homicides and assaults are concentrated in cities, with more than half of all firearms-related gun deaths in the nation occurring in 127 cities. And whereas cities across the nation, including Geneva, are working to end the senseless violence with evidence-based solutions and protecting public safety in the communities they serve is the mayor's and city council's highest responsibility. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from people with dangerous histories. And whereas mayors and city councils and law enforcement officers know their communities best, are the most familiar with local criminal activity and how to address it, and are best positioned to understand how to keep their citizens safe. And whereas gun violence prevention is more important than ever as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to exacerbate gun violence after more than a year of increased gun sales, increased calls to suicide and domestic violence hotlines, and an increase in city gun violence. And whereas in January 2013, Hadea Pendleton was tragically shot and killed at age 15, and on June 4, 2021, to recognize the 24th birthday of Hadea Pendleton, born June 2nd, 1997, people across the United States will recognize National Gun Violence Awareness Day and wear orange in tribute to Hadea Pendleton and other victims of gun violence and the loved ones and victims. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Hadea's friends who asked that their classmates commemorate her life by wearing orange, they chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods. And orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. And whereas by wearing orange on June 4, 2021, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Kevin Burns of the City of Geneva, declares the first Friday in June, June 4, 2021, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the City of Geneva. And I encourage all citizens to support their local community's efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives. Do I have a motion to so adopt? Alderman Swanson makes the motion. Alderman Marks makes the second. All in favor of this motion, ladies and gentlemen, a voice vote is sufficient. Please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay. The floor is yours, folks. Good to see you guys again. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Steve McHugh, Martha Paschke, Lauren Kunstler, all from Geneva, and we're with Moms Demand Action of Kane and Kendall County. We just wanted to say thank you, Mayor Burns and City Council, for recognizing Gun Violence Awareness Day and for honoring the survivors. Mass shootings grab the national headlines every day, which often overshadows the fact that an average of 320 Americans are shot every day, with 106 resulting in death, many from domestic violence and from suicide by gun. These are comparatively rare within our city limits in Geneva, but we're all affected nonetheless. So we just wanted to thank you for acknowledging and taking action to bring awareness to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I should note, and Martha, you and I were communicating, the reason we're offering this proclamation this evening is because we're not going to meet again until after June 4th. So, and I think the benefit of doing so is that we give people lead time to help commemorate and celebrate that important day. So would you object if I presented you with the proclamation? We can maybe get a photo?
That'd be great.
Awesome. And if you'd rather me not be in the photo, please indicate by saying aye. And look at Alderman Burkhart. Look at that, wearing the orange.
Can we do it by firehouse number 3? No?
At least you laughed, for God's sake. It's like, what the? Come on up here, guys.
No, I don't think I do either. I think I have a peach shirt. It's probably the color of her sweater.
I think if they drop their mask, it might be a better picture.
Well, we'll certainly be able to pinpoint all the photos that were taken during the pandemic.
Yeah, for sure. Trying to change the tires. Thankfully, our lovely police officer changed the tire for her.
Was it in the driveway?
Yeah.
Is she gonna do the problem like Item 3B, ladies and gentlemen, recommend the mayor's 2021-2022 reappointment of city attorney Chuck Radovich and board and commission members. All of you should have in your packet the names of said recommended appointments. Reappointments, excuse me. Is there a motion? So moved. Alderman Kosarog makes the motion. Second. Seconded by Alderman Marks. Any questions, comments? Ms. Dawkins, please take the roll call.
Bruno?
Aye.
Burkhart?
Aye.
Ruby? Aye. Caven?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Kosarog?
Aye.
Maladra? Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
Item 3B has been adopted unanimously. Thank you. Item 4, amendments to the agenda. Are there any amendments this evening? Item 5 is the omnibus agenda. All items marked with an asterisk are considered to be routine and can be considered and acted upon with one motion. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Alderman Bruno makes that motion. Alderman Swanson makes the second. It's like a double play thing. You guys are all over this stuff today. No questions, no comments. Ms. Dawkins, please take the roll on the omnibus agenda.
Burkhart?
Aye.
Ruby? Aye. Caven?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Kosarog?
Aye.
Maladra? Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
The omnibus agenda has been adopted with 10 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, and 0 absent. Every time you say Alderman Mayor, I go, or Mayor, I think, I'd like to make a motion that we change names. We got to redo the whole article now for you.
You go by first name now?
Yeah, just first name. Item 10, folks, municipal bills for payment. We kindly ask our city administrator to read the bills in their aggregate for our consideration.
Municipal bills for payment total $4,021,319.98.
I move that we approve and pay the bills as read. The individual items that add up to that amount can be found in tonight's city council packet on the city website.
Alderman Bruno makes the motion to pay the bills as presented, which are available not only in our city council packets, but also on the city's website. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, I knew that, man. It's like,
There was a long pause.
there was a long pause. It's like, you guys are like the two guys in the Muppet Show. You guys are up in the corner over there.
Put them together.
Swanson surprisingly makes the second. Any questions or comments regarding the bills? Bless you. Ms. Dawkins, whenever you're ready, please take the roll.
Ruby? Aye. Caven?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Kosarog?
Aye.
Maladra? Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Burkhart?
Aye.
The city's bills have been adopted unanimously and to be paid accordingly. Item 12, presentation of ordinances, resolutions, petitions, and bids. 12A is to recommend approval of resolution number 2021-36, authorizing execution of change order number 1 with Henderson Products Incorporated in an amount of $8,488 for an overall contract price not to exceed $438,952. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Oh, thank God. Alderwoman Burghardt. Makes, we gotta give that to Ruby. It's like we're playing, it's like Alderwoman Ruby makes the second. Ms. Dawkins, please.
So you may recall on April 19th, you all approved the purchase of 2 Peterbilt Model 348 single-axle trucks with snow plows, salt spreaders, and liquid application systems at a price not to exceed $430,464. Due to the rising cost of raw materials and the age of the quote, staff was informed of an increase in the cost of materials that required in the upfitting of the trucks. So for your consideration this evening is an updated quote reflecting the increase in raw materials. The quote is valid until June 21st, 2021, and the new total cost for the purchase of the trucks would reflect an increase of $8,488. We had Superintendent Landers double booked in technical issues, so Director Babica is here if you have any questions, but I would note, I'm sure if any of you have been watching the news, pretty much everything is just rising in cost, and we're seeing this kind of across the board in various areas of just pricing changing almost on a daily basis. So with that,
With that, Alderwoman Burghardt made the motion, Alderwoman Ruby made the second. Any questions? Oh, Alderman Kilburg, excuse me.
Did we have other bids? For the 2 plows?
This equipment was purchased through a national cooperative purchasing allowance, so they had already
Okay.
put the trucks out to bid.
Okay. So this change order impacting these vehicles, that's across the board, then anything, any of the bids then that any other municipalities would have let, they're going to be impacted in the same way as Geneva?
Well, the issue to this one is actually that staff dropped the ball. There's really no other explanation for it. The bid was only good for 30 days. The staff sat on it. Well, I shouldn't say sat on it, that's inaccurate, but we were reviewing the bids and reviewing the timing. We had just adopted the fiscal '22 budget. We were reviewing the expected cash flow reserves for the upcoming fiscal year, and we waited on the quote for too long. We should have secured a fresh quote to make sure that everything was still good. The quote was only good for 30 days. There's really no excuse for that. We simply dropped the ball, and we will do better next time.
So they caught us on a technicality there.
Within their rights.
Yeah, right.
and we did sit on it because we were waiting to make sure that we had money to purchase them and did not want to make that large of an expenditure before we were further along at the end of the last fiscal year.
That's all I had.
Anyone else from the council? For Mr. Babica?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying you dropped the ball. I love that.
I dropped the ball.
And for the record, I was a lineman in high school, so on a regular basis.
Yeah. Any additional questions from the council? We do have a motion from Alderwoman Burghardt, a second from Alderwoman Ruby. Ms. Dawkins, please take the roll.
Caven.
Aye.
Hilberg.
Aye.
Kosarog.
Aye.
Maladra.
Aye.
Marks.
Aye.
Mayor.
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
Bruno.
Aye.
Burkhart. Aye. Ruby.
Aye.
Item 12A has been adopted with 10 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, and 0 absent. Item 12B is continued discussion regarding proposed legislation and its potential impact on City of Geneva electric utility. I don't know if this necessarily requires a motion and a second. It's simply discussion. So with that, I'd like to open the floor to our council members. All of you probably have copious notes like I do from the last time we met and discussed all this, so this again is a continuation of those discussions.
Mayor?
Alderman Swanson, yes, sir.
I'd like to start out by noting that the mission statement for the electric division is not really in line with our strategic plan. Currently, the mission statement says, "Serving the community with reliable power at the lowest possible rates," period. And our strategic plan, our objective is to take actions to promote long-term sustainability and reduce the city's carbon footprint. So my question tonight, or request, is that the electric division staff take a look at that mission statement, perhaps propose a revision for us to review soon, so that we could approve that, so that the two are in line with each other, particularly given the conversations we've been having with Prairie State. So my request is that not only do we look at that it's economical and reliable, but in some way that it's environmentally sound or that it promotes long-term sustainability. I think it would be appropriate for staff to draft it, and then the council would review that, discuss it, and approve it at the next meeting, if possible.
Is there any objection to Alderman Swanson's recommendation?
No, I would support that as long as staff, as long as it was, well, staff would phrase it such that it's easily adhered to. I wouldn't want something ambiguous from us. So.
As long as you two keep wearing blue every meeting, it'll be easy to change.
Oh, we're almost.
That is blue. No objections?
Rich, do you think that's a feasible timeline? Next meeting, or?
Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the next meeting is the 7th of June.
Okay.
Sure.
I have a new superintendent.
No objection? Alderman Bruno.
And since I had the floor, so I'll jump in here first on this item. So I think we have consensus that on the council that we want to decarbonize our power, but we also recognize the unique and challenging position we are in with regards to current legislation and NIMPA and our obligation to Prairie State through that. I know the legislation's out there. I'm not sure what the voting timeline is, but if we truly do support that intent, I think it would be important for us to sooner rather than later to voice that qualified support, assuming that our particular challenges, along with other NIMPA and related communities, those challenges could be mitigated. I'm sure we'll have a kind of a round-robin discussion, but that's kind of where I'm at. I'd like to see some action if we can in a reasonable timeline.
The floor is open, ladies and gentlemen. Alderman Maladra, is it? It is.
Along those lines, I agree with Alderman Bruno that the council seems to have reached consensus, not even recently, but a long time ago, at least our last two strategic planning sessions, that this is the right thing to do. The devil, of course, is in the details, and that's true of any statement we make as well. You mentioned that it's important we get our qualified support out there sooner rather than later. I'm interested in hearing what those qualifications are. I am comfortable in supporting things that reflect our mission, as Alderman Swanson puts it, that reflects, in fact, the way that we've been going about our business for the past several years. Our stewardship, as Director Babick has said. I'm uncomfortable supporting things that are founded on unknowns. I'm uncomfortable supporting anything that places what we do today in a light that says we can't be doing that anymore. When I started here and we were looking at the generation facility, natural gas was viewed as a green alternative. So I have trouble understanding how all of a sudden that's become a bad thing. So I'm just interested in making sure that we're clear about our qualifications. There's a lot about the proposed legislation across all 5 bills that I'm excited by, that I've been waiting for years, but they do put us in a position that's tricky. And so it's very important that we define clearly what we need to see so that we can make this transition without breaking the backs of our ratepayers.
Point of order, are we following standard, recognized?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Following standard Robert's Rules of Order.
Yes.
Before I recognize Alderman Bruno for a second time, is there anyone who wishes to speak for a first time? Alderman Kasserag?
I guess I just, as I've thought a lot about this over the last week and particularly the weekend and today, it's like incredibly complex issue. For every action, there's a reaction. And I just, on a personal level, I'm absolutely for moving forward. I would close it tomorrow on a personal level. But I feel like as a city council, we've got a lot more questions to answer here. Which bill is right? What are the implications, as Craig said? Not basing our decision on assumptions. And just making sure we're making the right step forward. I particularly feel like we haven't given enough weight to our business customers. All the emails we get, at least that I've gotten, pretty much are residential customers, and they say, I'll pay more. But I don't think that answers our big picture, especially given that 50% of our ratepayers are our top 10 business employers in the city. And I really think strongly that we need to make sure they're included in our discussion. I understand there may be some discussion among staff, but we haven't heard about it here yet at council in some way that they're represented. And, I just think we really need to be careful about the complexities here. I'm not an energy expert. Sure, I have my dreams as an individual, but as a council, we have a lot of ethical not a lot, but several competing ethical obligations. And so we do have a moral obligation to close this, I do believe that, but we also have a financial obligation to protect our ratepayers and make sure we're doing what's right for them. And so I just caution taking any significant steps in terms of policy tonight until we have more information, more direction from the state and the legislation. And I just want to make sure that us and all our ratepayers are protected. So I guess I just wanted to stress from my point of view the complexity that we have and how I don't feel like I fully understand all of that. And so I just wanted to say, let's tread lightly as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. No one objects, Alderwoman Burkhart?
I just wanted to point out, after last week's meeting, that Alderman Bruno and Alderman Ruby and I talked, and I think felt much the same as a lot of you did. There's so much, it's such a complex issue, and but we weren't sure still where we stood as a city, and so we did work to put together some kind of a statement that I've shared with all of you. I brought copies. I'll pass it out if it's something that'll help with discussion. I think we tried to walk a fine line of of supporting the closure of Prairie State for those moral reasons we talk about while trying to remind state lawmakers that cities like Geneva, Batavia, Rochelle are in a unique position, and that even though we don't have a coal plant in our backyard, that will be, the economic impact if it was to be shut down and the jobs lost, but we're tied to a coal plant nonetheless. So, I'm struggling with this too, because it does feel like there's so much changing even on a day-to-day basis, but I also want to be, honestly on the right side of history and weigh in when we have the chance to weigh in, because I think at some point it'll be too late. And, our voice won't be heard on this issue, which we do have a vested interest in. So I'm eager to hear what everybody else's thoughts are tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you. Without objection, Alderman Bruno for a second time.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Alderman Burkhart, with the bringing up those responsibilities. To Alderman Maladra's point on the specifics, I was pretty comfortable that if we had a magic wand and could make all of our NIMPA obligations disappear, just wholesale disappear, I don't think I sensed any pushback. That was the big hiccup, possibly the size of our Geneva generation facility. So I think the qualified, if intentionally vague area of support or letter of support, I think that walks that line in that we don't want to write legislation from the dais. We hate doing it here. I think going into specifics and telling state legislators, do this and this and this precisely in this way. Batavia's letter, I don't know if you've read Batavia's letter, that seems more problematic to me. But I had the sense that we had consensus that if NIMPA obligations disappeared, we'd be golden in terms of being able to support the green energy legislation. And again, with Alderman Kasserad, personally, I went out from under it. And I think, we have to balance our fiduciary duty with our ethical obligations to the future. It seems like where the legislation is today, we have, if we're truly supportive of this, seems like we have more impact today than in several months to communicate that support. And I think qualified support, specifically addressing NIMPA obligations and possibly our generation facility, is the way to help our Illinois legislators. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone objective? I recognize Alderman Maladra for a second time. Sir, the floor is yours.
I agree. If we could crawl out from under those obligations, things would look a lot more clear. I think a second concern I have is we owe it to our ratepayers to provide reliable access to power. It's not clear to me at this point what replaces NIMPA. There's a lot of potential, there's a lot of possibility, but I don't know that the certainty is there. We're talking about enough power to provide base load to every ratepayer in Illinois. And I don't know that power exists today, and I don't know when it's going to exist. I know that the bills all call for some form of investment to, pardon the pun, generate that capacity. But I think that we need to be clear that there needs to be a reliable source before we turn anything off. Because if there's not, then we're just heading into a period of even greater uncertainty. I agree that we ought not be specific, but we have got to say that we don't just wholeheartedly embrace whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. There are consequences we have to deal with. I think that the wording that you guys have handed out is balanced and captures our hopes as well as our concerns. The one area of concern I did not see addressed was the reliability aspect. Somebody needs to explain to me how I can trust the projections are going to be there. That's all.
That's all, sir? Alderman Kilberg, sir? And then,
I think Alderman Maladra raises a good point. I don't think anyone really knows what 2030 would look like if all of a sudden we would close all these coal plants. The Biden plan calls for reducing CO2 by 50% by 2030. And the path forward would be to cut 50% of the carbon emissions by closing all U.S. coal plants. But as you pointed out, we all still need electricity. And how's that void going to be replaced? The electrical production from U.S. coal plants just happens to be about equal the nuclear power plant's electrical production. So nuclear is about equal to what coal is providing. We currently have 94 reactors in 56 plants in 28 states currently. To replace all the coal plants, all we would have to do is double our nuclear fleet of reactors in the next 10 years. I don't see that being impossible. With permitting, I think that's certainly achievable. So, not really. I think it's virtually impossible. The history of bringing on new nuclear reactors has been a long and protracted one historically, and I don't think it's probably going to be any different. I think the scale and scope to replace coal with new renewables is equally hard and costly. So they're just, from my perspective, there's still a lot of questions that need to be addressed more specifically as it relates not only to Geneva, not only to Illinois, but to the United States. I think Alderman Kosarag brought out a good point. 52% of our customer base is industrial, and I haven't received a letter yet from any industrial customer in Geneva yet. I don't know, has anyone? So I agree in principle with the letter that Tara and Becky and Mike drafted. I think that it's much more general than the one that Batavia drafted. It's something that I think I could support in principle. I think this is what we want to do, but I just still puzzled by moving pretty quickly on something that we really don't know a whole lot about yet as far as it relates specifically to our community. So, but I will support the draft that has been circulated, and I think it's general enough that I think it gets the point across that we're on board, but there's a lot more questions that still need to be answered. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone object to Alderwoman Burkhart for a second time? Floor is yours.
Yeah, and I just wanted to stress, because I'm a believer in the Open Meetings Act, that this is something Mike and Becky and I worked, the three of us, and then we did share on a 1 or 2 by 2 basis with our fellow aldermen. I didn't bring this here tonight thinking we're going to approve this tonight. It's not in the agenda for tonight. I brought this as a copy to have some, because this issue is so huge, to have something in front of us that you could go through almost line by line if we choose to go that way. And and edit and change and decide. So again, anybody watching at home, I don't know if we can include, this would be in the minutes, I suppose, could be in the minutes, or,
A formal request to add to the minutes would be required.
so I'll make that formal request to put that in the minutes. But again, I want to
Objection?
clarify, oh, yeah.
Without objection.
Without objection?
That I wasn't trying to do some end run around our meetings and to try to pass something that people, the members of the public, wouldn't get to see, so. I guess on a different point is, we could do nothing, and we might do nothing, and it's still gonna happen, you know, Springfield's gonna Springfield, like, it's gonna, and I'm from Springfield, so I can say that, so.
So that's a noun and a verb.
Yeah, yeah. As a proud page from the Illinois House of Representatives, I can say that. So, you know, and I'm sure there's arguments to be made on that. You know, why should we get involved? Do we have any clout? Is there anything us passing, whether it's this or an edited version of this or something like Batavia did? Will it make any difference? You know, I don't know. But I'm, again, eager to hear what everybody else has to say, and hopefully some of our members of the audience tonight, too. Thank you.
Alderman Mayor, Alderman Swanson, and without objection, Alderman Bruno.
Okay. New here, this was about, 10,000 volumes of information to take in my first week or two on the council. And I just want to say that, I've spent all of my education and a lot of my career trying to improve energy efficiency and move towards this direction of being more green and eliminating the danger that we're in for global warming. And this Prairie State issue, while I wasn't as fully informed before I joined the council as I am now, is really core to something that we need to get away from as a nation. But to put this load onto Geneva is too much. It needs to be alleviated by other agencies in the state and in the federal level, because we can't lose all of our industrial customers. We can't put it all on our ratepayers. We need to spread the load for basically our base load that we buy from Prairie State. The interesting thing that I think I found in learning about all this is that we really don't have any incentive to reduce our base load as it stands right now. And I think it's counterintuitive. It's not a great thing for this town even to not have some incentive to invest in greener technologies to improve our infrastructure, to let people have solar panels on their house to reduce our usage, to be able to compensate them for that, to allow our industrial tenants or users to install solar arrays to reduce their base load and become, have that be an offset. That's really where we should be, but because we're tied into a contract that requires, 50 megawatts? Is that what we're in? 50 megawatts?
35 megawatts. For
35 for us, 50 for Batavia?
55 for Batavia, 30 for Rochelle.
Okay. So a lot. We have a lot of power coming at us from Prairie State. And I encourage everybody on the council to get behind some support for closing down Prairie State. But like everybody said, it's not going to be turn off the switch and all of a sudden we're left without power. That's not fair to us. The grid is a network of energy suppliers, and we're just one user on that grid. So hopefully the state legislators will fix something up so that we can get out of this deal. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. I believe it's Alderman Swanson, and then, with no objection, Alderman, whoever the hell it is. It was, I think it was
Bruno.
Alderwoman Bruno for the, yeah, of course it is.
Thank you, Mayor.
Excuse me.
Alderwoman Burkhart and Mayor brought up very good points. I think the first is, I believe there are a lot of people out there who are confused as to what we're even discussing tonight and have been discussing for the last couple weeks. And we've been getting emails saying, please support the closure of Prairie State, thinking that we're going to do that. I saw an email that said the city council will make that decision. And I just want to point out to everyone listening, that is not what we're deciding. We do not have the ability to make that vote or even that decision. What we're discussing here is whether or not to send a letter to our legislators saying we support closure of Prairie State. And if it were to close, here is the impact that Geneva would face. That's what we're discussing right now. And as other aldermen have pointed out, there are complications to doing that. The partnerships that we're in, the agreements, and what that cascading effect would be, of which we have no idea what could happen to our ratepayers, to our industrial base, etc. So if we were to close this and someone asked, what will it do to my rate in the year 2035? We have no idea. We have had no dollars put in front of us. We can't say your rates will go up 10% or 15% or 100%. It's completely speculative. What we do know, though, is that electrical power is concentrated in the industrial users. 50% plus is of our electrical usage is being paid for by our industrial users. And we have been trying for the past 2 decades to diversify our property tax base, to have more industrial users and to have more commercial users, because property taxes right now are paid primarily from residences. So if we were to start losing those industrial users, that's property tax that we'd be losing as well. And so not only will you be paying more in electrical rates, you will be paying more in property tax rates, and our diversification efforts will be all for naught because we'll be even more residential. So until we have some of those questions answered, I think we need to tread carefully, as Alderman Kozarag pointed out. There are too many unknowns to just charge ahead and say, close it. On the other hand, the statement here is, in general, saying we support moving away from carbon energy and closing Prairie State, with some caveats, or please consider the impact to us. And I think we all agree with that statement. What we don't know, though, is are there any legal ramifications to providing this letter? And I think that would be an interesting topic to address as well before this were to go out. So I would like us to consider all of those factors. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor is open to anyone, save for those who have originally spoken.
I thought you forgot him again.
No, God, no. God, how could I? Look at that soul. Alderman Marks.
I think we're all are on the same page here. I think I agree with you. There's a lot to be thinking about. Alderman Kozarag, Alderman Lodger, even Alderman, you've all brought it up. Mayor, do you have any idea of where this is at? I mean, you know, we were told last week, hey, if this didn't pass by last Friday, it's not going to happen this time. Do we have any idea of how this is going through at this point?
My comments would be speculative at
Okay.
best, depending on who you talk to. Conversation earlier this afternoon, just prior to the meeting, was that if in fact a combination bill were advanced and voted on, you will without a doubt see a trailer bill also advanced to, quote, clean up what wasn't originally addressed, or perhaps what needs to be addressed. There is some articles out there in the public domain that it appears the governor's recommendation and path to 100 are getting married soon. There's elements still of CEJA and CUJA that are also gaining traction, but
No one knows.
nobody knows.
But, I mean, the letter is fine, and I think it's good, but who we would send this to already knows our position.
That's
Is that
correct.
correct? I mean, you, the staff,
That's correct.
They've sat down. I mean, I would suspect if they've had questions, they've called us. I mean, do we just feel we need something in writing, or is it that, I mean, I thought that everybody who represents us, at least the city of Geneva, in the state legislature is well aware of our feelings. Is that correct?
I can state unequivocally that Senator DeWitt, Senator Villa, Representative Wheeler, Representative Ugasti, and I believe, yes, Representative Herschel, yep, all are aware of quote, the challenges with endorsing one piece of legislation. And perhaps more importantly, I think they're all better aware of what it's like to be a municipally owned utility with a contract with Prairie State, comma, a generating facility, comma, and a waste management renewable energy contract with methane recapture. I think they're all pretty well aware of that. I think some of the statistics that Mr. Babica and Mr. Holton shared last week that some of you have commented on, 50+% of our energy is consumed by 10 users.
That's huge.
That's big. So, but to their credit, they have been nothing but open and communicative and solicitous of the challenges we face, not irrespective of any legislation, but just in reality.
What is NIMPA doing? Do we have any idea of what NIMPA is doing in regards to this, since we're part of that? Or are they still reaching out to state legislators also? Do we know that?
Well, NIMPA is made up of Geneva, Batavia, and Rochelle.
But
Geneva, of course, Batavia has had significant conversations at their legislative level. We are, of course, have had a couple. Rochelle has had, as I understand it, 0. There, for whatever reason, that's just the way it is. I think we.
It's not that we have NIMPA's not doing, it's the individual cities that are
Correct.
really doing this, okay.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, I'm concerned about, not just electrical rates, but tax rates also. I mean, we've been talking about a southeast corridor for a while now, and what are higher rates gonna do? I mean, without a lot of those answers, and let's, last week we were tossed out 100 to 120 acres to replace what we have, all of a sudden you got 50, you got another 30 from, Rochelle, 50 from Batavia. You're talking easily 400 acres. That's not cheap. And then you got to get, all those solar panels. I mean, it's going to take some time. And 8 years is a short time to build that much solar power or wind power. So I am all for green energy. I think everyone on this council is. But again, I would, if we send something, I would like to reiterate what we've already told those state legislatures, because that's really what the position always has been of Geneva, and I don't think it has changed that I'm aware of. I mean, I don't think anybody's here calling for absolute change. I mean, we all know what risk is out there. I mean, we were looking at 97 million in 2030. We still got 8 years to go for that, so we're probably well over $100 million that we owe on that plan, on that contract right now, which isn't something we have sitting in reserves, and I don't know too many cities who would. So I think we have to tread cautiously here and make sure our legislatures know where we stand, but so that they realize the difficult position that they would put us in if they do just close Prairie State and leave us with those kinds of bills, to be honest with you, because there'll be bills of closing it down. There'll probably be legal bills, because there'll probably be lawsuits left and right, which we will be part of paying for Prairie State also. So I don't think the answer is so simple, and I think we have to tread very, very lightly here.
No objection? Alderman Kilberg, sir, then Alderman Bruno?
I just would reiterate, I think the draft that was distributed, I think reads pretty well. My only suggested change would be the second sentence of the first paragraph, simply the council supports the general intent of the bills that would lead Illinois to a carbon-free electrical grid. That's the only change that I would suggest. And I would propose that we move forward with the draft as I've suggested. Yeah, I don't know. If we haven't heard from our electrical customers, how can we say it's overwhelmingly supported? 52% of our customer base. unless they all come to the next council meeting and say that they're all for it. I mean, that'd be pretty convincing. No, I just want to move it along because I know we spent 3 hours and 15 minutes at our last session on this. I don't know if we necessarily have to spend 3 hours tonight. I'm just saying, I think we've had an honest attempt to put together a letter that really conveys the attitude of this council. And I'm for supporting the draft with those minor changes that I've suggested.
No objection to recognize Alderman Bruno, unless anyone wishes to speak who has not yet spoken. Alderman Bruno, sir?
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Kilberg. Well, since this isn't an agenda item to vote tonight, between now and next city council, we could theoretically workshop this. I think there are probably more details that could go into it, but apparently we're not in a position to actually vote on this.
I'm suggesting we move forward and let staff or those people that drafted it make those amendments and then bring it back and then get it on the agenda at the committee of the whole meeting.
To the point of reliability, I'm not the expert. There's a whole lot of legislation. I believe grid reliability is built into some of that, which could shift dates if there isn't a capacity for solar, but, don't hold me to that. But I believe that's being considered. And I think the letter well points out that it's our ratepayers that we have to be concerned with. And absolutely, it would be devastating if Geneva could not be competitive for industrial tenants. That'll make that whole southeast addition a moot point if we can't be competitive with the rest of the state. And as far as the unknowns, I think this is Alderman Swanson. Come 2035, I think, yes, there are a lot of unknowns, but even if nothing changes, I think there's probably a lot of unknowns. So I don't think it's necessarily prudent to not move ahead on this type of an issue with these timeframes because we don't know everything up front. While I appreciate that we want to have everything buttoned down, I think this is the type of moral issue that we have to make some tough decisions on sometimes. That's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Cavan, sir.
Thank you. Well, I think there's been a lot of really good points made already this evening. One of the things that was said about reliability, if we are to go ahead and send something, that is definitely something that I would like to see included inside of the message that we were provided. I overall think that it's general, and I know a lot of people have said this. I think that I'm very happy to support renewable energy. And if we could flip that switch tomorrow, it's been said numerous times, I don't think there's anybody sitting up here that wouldn't, but some of those additional ramifications and all those ratepayers that we represent have to be considered, as many people have already outlined. So, if at some point in time we make some additional modifications, I don't object to sending this more or less the way that it is sent. But to blindly say, or not, blindly is not the right way to say it, but, to say that I support this one specific bill 100% regardless of what other ramifications there are for the other people that are in this community and those ratepayers and those businesses, that isn't something that I'm comfortable signing my name to. Some of the other discussion was, it's been made very clear to us that our state representation knows exactly the position that some of these cities, including Geneva, are in. And I feel very comfortable that they're already aware of what this could potentially do to us. Me personally, Do I think that us sending a letter similar to this, and like I said, I'm willing to support it. I think it's written well, and I think that it's loose enough that it doesn't tie us down to anything real specific. But do I really think that us sending this letter makes a marked difference or change in what the state legislature is going to do? I don't. And maybe that's incorrect. I mean, we have, 21,000 residents here and all these different businesses. If everybody wants to send something to their state representation of where they stand and why they think that way, that is something that's available to everybody. But this council of 10, this board of 10, by putting this together, in my opinion, I don't think that really makes a big difference for what the state winds up doing. So I'm certainly willing to support it in the way that it looks right here. I don't think that it's going to make a big difference, and I have a lot of concerns with what this winds up meaning for those commercial businesses and our ratepayers with not knowing how this is exactly going to look and what those specifics are. And I do agree with Alderman Bruno. You're not probably going to be able to know what all of those are, and the state is still going to wind up doing what they're going to do. And we may be still sitting here 12 months from now having the same discussion, finding out that everything passed exactly the way it was written. If that's the case, that's the case. But just saying that regardless of what winds up happening to our ratepayers is not something I'm willing to go in with. What I saw here was, I thought, pretty reasonable with those other considerations thought about. So, thank you.
Without objection, Alderman Maladra, Alderwoman Ruby has not yet spoken. So with Alderwoman Ruby, then we'll go to Alderman Maladra and Alderman Kasserag.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments in response to some of the conversation tonight. I feel like the importance of putting this in writing is that we, as a council, we as elected officials, we have a voice, and this is one of our opportunities to use it. And I just think this is a really important topic, and everything in life that's important, did you get it in writing? I just feel like this is common sense. We just need to put this in writing. I feel like the importance of the topic is big enough that it's worth putting it into writing. And the other reason I feel really strongly about that is, regardless of what people know from conversation, again, relating to importance, we're relying on them to remember. I don't trust my own memory. I certainly don't want to have to trust that our legislators who have much more on their minds than we do, we're just one municipality dealing with this issue. They're dealing with the entire state, and we're going to trust that they're going to remember the details of each municipality. I just think it's really important. We've got it spelled out. Everyone seems pretty comfortable with what we have here, and I just feel really strongly that we need to move forward with it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Maladra, sir, and then Alderman Kasserag.
Thanks. So I chafe a little bit at the idea that this is, the right or the wrong side of history, or that we're not making the correct moral decision. I think what we're trying to put in writing is something that we have felt, believed, and actually acted upon for all the years I've been on the council anyway. We're forgetting that 28% of our energy portfolio is renewable and green. I believe we heard last week that puts us out as a leader, at least in the state of Illinois. It is in our strategic plan and has been for a while, even though it's not reflected necessarily in the mission statement for the electric utility. So I think that in terms of, being on the right side of history, we've been there for a long time. I think what we're trying to do, as Alderman Ruby said, put in writing what we're already doing, what we already believe, and what that is we believe in the responsible transition to decarbonization. What I worry about is although I'm not looking for specifics, I feel we need to call out the state on a few things. First, beware of hearing what you're looking and wishing to hear. This has all kinds of stuff that many of us have been looking forward to for ages. But at the end of the day, when you strip all of that away, it's an unfunded mandate, another unfunded mandate. And that lack of funding could cause the city significant problems. So to rush into embracing the general idea without specifying that it has to be done responsibly from certain perspectives, reliability, and the economics of the situation, is basically just to stand up and say, lay that on me, and we can't do that. I feel that, like everybody else here, this statement is balanced. I agree with Alderman Marks. It's nothing that hasn't been conveyed to our Springfield legislators already, but there's nothing wrong with hitting them over the head with it. Further, I think there's nothing wrong with indicating to them that we understand that if this comes without certain caveats, it's not going to work for the entire state. It's a nice thing to say, but it just isn't going to work, and then we've accomplished nothing. There's been, as far as I can tell, no negotiation. This is a full steam ahead juggernaut, and that's another thing that sort of makes me worry a little bit. Those things often don't end well. So I support putting something in writing. I think this gets us a long way. I agree with Alderman Kilberg's suggested change, and with a little bit more time, we can come up with a statement that's just as balanced, that reflects our concerns about getting out from under the NIMPA burden, but also adds something about the importance of reliability, and then we'll have it. Thanks.
Alderman Kasserag, sir.
Well, just thinking about the timing here, and like I said, maybe tread lightly. If we're not able to vote on this tonight or this month, I believe, right? Confirming. Yeah, we're not. 100%. We are not able to vote on this tonight. And not until June. I believe the legislative session is over already at the end of May. I just looked it up. Is that true, Stephanie? Can you confirm? The legislative session is over on May 31st.
That is correct.
So a letter in June isn't really going to impact much if we're admitting that it impacts much in the first place at all. And if we're looking for timing, as you said, Becky, and putting it in writing and things like that, maybe the timing is better spent when we see what happens, what comes together, and reacting more specifically rather than in a general sense at a later time. We could also ask staff to come up with maybe a more comprehensive energy strategy moving forward. I think we've all made our desires clear. How do we do that? I have no idea. My guess is Superintendent Holton and Director Babica could probably give us a lot more direction, given enough time for that. And so, given that, I guess I'd be honest, I really just don't see the point of this letter at this time. As much as I do support it, I don't have any problem with the content of it. I would agree that with the minor changes that have been proposed, but a letter in June to our legislators in Springfield, I mean, this is going to go in the circular file for sure until they get back to it. I don't know how it works in the fall or next year in 2022. So I just think that really throws a kink into things, given the timing and the fact that whatever will be done by June. I guess that's all I have right now.
Thank you, sir. Everyone has spoken. Alderman Bruno, sir.
Well, the window's closing. I think Alderman Kasserag is correct. if we wanted to influence the legislation, we might have missed our opportunity. I'm getting probably a majority of voices that actually accept the general content of the letter, so it's disappointing that we can't influence our legislators before they vote on something. So I don't know if, well, if we're not voting on it, I guess I'll
Alderman Marks, then I'd like
Maybe-
to comment.
Maybe this might be a question, maybe for the city attorney, but can the council really give the mayor the authority to write the letter on our behalf without a vote? I mean, he kind of knows the general, I mean, you've been out there in front of everybody anyways, I mean, to get our position across in writing without taking a vote?
That's not really the Geneva way, absent some language or direction. Tonight, we have a matter up for discussion purposes. Taking the language of this letter and asking that staff look at it, circulate it, and put it on a cow, and then up for a vote would be the proper direction. Alderman Marks, if you wanted then to have the mayor deliver the letter or weigh in on it, that would be permissible. Obviously, there's nothing stopping individual council members from, in their own individual voices, giving, their opinions as well. The only thing I didn't hear tonight, by the way, just because I didn't know we were going to actually propose language, we're a member of NIMBA, and that organization, I want to make sure we're not violating any of our obligations as that organization, too. So whatever the council wishes to do, I'm just going to look at making sure that that as a member of that organization, we're not doing anything contrary to its charter, mission statement, or the like. But you can direct this for next week or whenever you want.
To Alderman Marks and Alderman Bruno's point, I was going to echo what the city attorney said with respect to individual communication, what have you. I will say, and this will come as no surprise to anyone, in my meetings with legislators, I am representing the council. And we have been very clear, as Mr. Babica and Ms. Dawkins will acknowledge, that we embrace the philosophy of all legislation percolating with respect to a clean energy future, absolutely. And then we lay it on the table with respect to some of the challenges we see by putting on our trustee hats for the utility. That's it. There are other issues within some of this legislation as well, as all of us are probably aware. We have not talked yet about GGF. We have not talked yet about WMRE. We have not talked yet about the ICC oversight. We have not talked yet about this entire growing up, if you will, of a whole nother industry that's designed to keep an eye out for, or what have you. And that's all, it sounds great. It sounds great. But when I have conversations, and I'm calling you on behalf of the city council, I focus on those three assets. That's it. The corporate governance stuff, that'll all be worked out. We have two former elected officials with us tonight. That'll be worked out in trailer legislation, I'm sure. But the big question is the assets, and that's it. And I have not yet heard from any of the industrial users. I've spoken to one, whose only comment to me was that while residential ratepayers may see this as a necessary expense, we see it as a $400,000 hit based on the numbers we see now. And they didn't use the word hit, but you know what I mean, an expense. So I think phone calls are more impressive. If you have their cell phone numbers, text them. I don't know if Representative Anderson or Senator Sandak want to comment on that, but I would certainly not put you in a bind. But Alderman Bruno, you have the floor still. Marks, Alderwoman Burkhart.
I was just going to ask, Mayor, I mean, has there been any coordinated effort? I mean, I'm looking at the clients of Prairie State. There's 40 in Illinois.
Correct.
Altamont, down by Effingham, Riverton, near where I'm from, Rantoul, Princeton, Metropolis, Highland, Greenland, Freeburg, Chatham, I mean, it just goes on, it's all over the state. That's one of, and that similar number of towns in 7 other states.
Right.
Has there been any coordinated effort among the Prairie State? And I think we focus on Prairie State because it is the elephant in the room. It's the one we have contracts with through 2141. It's the one that a lot of people got really rich off that project and then hightailed out of town.
I'm not aware of any concentrated effort via the ownership of Prairie State to coalesce their teams and say, fight this. I'm not aware of that at all. I am aware of growing concern from a federal level that if in fact something should occur, hypothetically speaking, the switch is turned off tomorrow, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and federal law will take over, saying you've now just blocked interstate commerce. I have no idea what that entails. But that's something to seriously consider.
Sure, I mean, all these municipalities in Ohio and
Exactly,
Kentucky and
yes.
that had no say in.
I would assume they're watching as closely as we are. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, so.
And I wouldn't expect Prairie State to get behind that. I guess I thought maybe the communities themselves.
I'm not aware of it. You know, what I find most interesting, and Representative Anderson and Senator Sandak, and probably, and I'm not putting you guys on a spot, but I'm just using you as examples. And I said this last week. I attended the Sierra Club webinar, and as all of you know, I hosted a webinar last week, and I believe Alderman Mayer and Alderman Bruno were participated, and perhaps one other. Not one municipality has been invited to the table in any of these proposed legislative initiatives. Not one. One gentleman who was supportive of one piece of legislation actually admitted after the call, oh yeah, whoops. Because I believe that most of the authors, lobbyists, whatever you want to call them, believe we're all the same. And if Addison thinks this way, and Glen Ellen thinks that way, well, surely Geneva, St. Charles, Batavia, Rochelle, and Naperville think that way. And then you begin that explanation of, well, we're different and here's why. And despite the best effort to explain the differences, there has not been, as Alderman Bruno chatted during that call, specific language in any of the bills that calls for relief for any municipal-owned utilities who happen to have a contract with or a generation facility in excess of 25 megawatts, what have you. So I still think there's a steep learning curve even from our friends in the legislature. My worry is, like it is in all things, that come, 2 strokes before midnight, all hell breaks loose, and then we all have to sift through all the legislation to see what's happening. So, but certainly. Alderman Bruno.
Thank you, Mayor. This would be for Council Sandak. So this is an item without a motion, a discussion item. Is there, since it's not published as an action item, is there any mechanism of us turning it into an action item and workshopping a letter tonight?
And then taking final action on it? Well, I think there possibly could be a way, but that's certainly not the Geneva process of putting language out before its constituents, all constituents, whether it's residential or business, letting them know this is what's proposed. I'll leave that. You're the elected body, that's your call. But that, in my tenure, and I would defer to the mayor, and frankly, you have a tenured practitioner. I don't think that's ever been done, sight unseen.
My suspicion is the community knows where we stand as a certainly individually and probably collectively. And our professional staff stand with us, and we stand with them. We know where the world's going. We want to get there as well.
Well, my fear is that by not acting we've lost an opportunity. So unless there's consensus to turn this into a workshop, which I don't think there is, we'll.
I'm sorry, but it's only May 17th. Is there a reason we can't meet next Monday?
Call a
don't know. Didn't we have that, we had it set aside as a meeting
It's
anyway?
always set aside. The second and fourth are always set aside.
Alderman Bruno still has the floor. Anything else, sir?
Well, then I would put on the table that we have a special city council set for next Monday with a starting point of this draft letter that we can workshop.
Or special meeting.
Well,
Committee of the whole meeting?
well, if we want it to be an action item, it's got to be special city council. We can,
There's a motion on the floor to host a special, I'm going to clarify this with the city attorney. The motion's fair.
Totally.
Okay, is there a second to that motion by Alderman Bruno?
Second.
Alderwoman Ruby makes that motion. Now we can speak to the motion. Alderman Swanson, then Caven.
Thank you, Mayor. Would we have time to get a legal briefing as to the ramifications of this letter to our NIMPA and other obligations in that time?
Yes.
Okay, so we can count on having that available in a week's time.
I'm speaking for two other people who are going to be mad at me, but the answer is yes.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, that's all good.
Thank you.
Alderman Caven, sir.
Thank you. I know I've heard a couple of statements that, you know, if we don't do this, whether it's tonight or next Monday, if we don't do this right now, we're going to miss our window. Are we even positive that they're going to vote on this legislation or one of these makeshift bills over the course of the next 2 weeks? I mean, we've been hearing about this for some time, and what I am now hearing and reading is this is probably going to get taken back up again next fall or potentially next spring. So while I appreciate those statements, I think that the odds are slim that it even goes for a vote. And based off of everything else that was talked about and trying to get additional information, and I know we said we could have the legal briefing by then, it could be done or to make sure that everything is fine. I guess I feel like it's being rushed a little bit. And I don't want to miss a window either, but I think it's very unlikely that any of this even winds up being voted on in the next week and a half. So I personally don't see why we would have to try to crunch this in the next week. But I'll thank you. I'll see if anybody else has any other thoughts on that.
Thank you. This is on the motion, ladies and gentlemen. Any comments regarding the motion offered by Alderman Bruno and seconded by Alderwoman Ruby? And that motion is to host a special city council meeting on Monday evening, the 24th, starting at 7 p.m. at the Mill Race. Just making sure you're still paying attention. Alderman Kosterog, sir.
This is going to probably be even tougher than for the attorneys, but is it possible for us to solicit and try to get business feedback somehow or another before Monday?
Yeah, that would be an economic development. My gut tells me that the short answer is yes. Feedback, no guarantee. I mean, we know,
Solicit, yes.
for example, we know that our largest industrial user is Johnson Controls. Johnson Controls has on their own website, they're pledged to be, quote, carbon neutral by 2040. Now, we can all pick apart the word neutral. That's why some people argue with the net zero. Drop the word net. That's too clever. Whether any firm in this community would actually make a public statement one way or the other, I don't know. I'd be shocked. Because I think they would have to approve that through their board of governors and what have you, board of directors prior to making any such statement. But that's just my guess. I can make certainly some calls. I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't looking for necessarily public statements like this is our position on the bill or the statement from Geneva. It could be anonymous, just, we like the discussions in the letter and we want to move forward with no name on it, or do we have 10 people doing that, or, you know what I mean? Just something general so that we have some actionable information there. If we don't have that, I'm not comfortable moving forward in a rushed manner at the last minute to make this happen. I think, I personally feel very confident that we've all made our positions clear and through the mayor, working with the legislators, that the city of Geneva's position is clear enough for the time before the end of this legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion, ladies and gentlemen? Alderman Marks?
Writing a letter with 10 people from the dais cannot be the easiest thing to do. I mean, I see a ton of pitfalls in that. I do agree with Alderman Kasserag. I think our legislatures know where we stand on this, and to try to rush something through, because, we don't know. They could be voting on this week, and to do this. I think they know our position. I think our position is known to them. They can reach out to us. I don't know if they have after last week's meeting whatsoever, if any of those legislatures have. We're all welcome to pick up the phone and talk to them also ourselves. I'm not sure what a letter is really going to do at this point. That's my feeling at this point. And to try to draft it with 10 people or 11 people at a dais, I'm just not sure how productive that is. I think Alderman Burkhart and Ruby and Bruno did a nice job putting something together. But again, the 50% of the users haven't weighed in, and we don't think they will weigh in because they can't weigh in. And so to take it down that road, I'm not sure it's the right thing to do at this point. That's my opinion.
Thank you. On the motion, ladies and gentlemen? Alderwoman Ruby?
Thank you. Just a brief comment. Our individual voices are not nearly as impactful, even if all 10 of us spoke, as our voices are together as a council. So that's the importance of the letter.
Thank you. Alderman Mayor?
I do think it's important that we write the letter and issue the letter. If it takes a meeting next Monday, I think we should do it. I have received 20 to 30 emails in my 2 weeks in office here about this issue. If I could not bore my friends to death, I'm sure I could get them all to care about this issue a lot more too. And it's not just supporting, the move to green energy and the carbon neutral and all the other buzzwords that we can throw around. It's that we really need to protect our interests. We need to state that we want our legislators to protect our municipal electric and fight for something that's fair to us in resolving this problem. I think we all want to resolve the problem. We don't want to get stuck holding a bag of debt and cost on behalf of Geneva.
Thank you. Alderman Swanson, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion is to have another meeting to discuss this letter. We're not committing to issuing a letter
That's
next
correct.
week.
That's
So I think that's fine to have another meeting. At that point, we would vote on whether or not to issue it if it was a votable item. I also wanted to address the idea of polling or doing a mini referendum. We don't do that for any topic. We don't go out and try to get everyone to solicit. That's a referendum, and we don't do that. We are the public servants who were elected to make the decisions, and you don't know if you're going to get everyone to opine, or what do you do if it's 5 to 5 of those 10? So just to put a little bit of a damper on that concept of polling people, we don't do that for every decision we make. But having a meeting to discuss this further, I think, is a fine idea. So I would support that. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion, ladies and gentlemen, anyone else before we take a roll call vote? Ms. Dawkins, whenever you're ready, the motion is to host a special City of the Council meeting on Monday, the 24th of May, 7 p.m., City Council Chamber, 109 James Street. Is that the address?
That is the address. Kilberg,
Nay.
Kasserag,
Aye.
Maladra,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
Swanson,
Aye.
Bruno,
Aye.
Berghardt,
Aye.
Ruby. Aye. Caven.
Aye.
With a motion of 9 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. Yes, sir. Is that permissible, Mr. City Attorney? That's permissible. The vote is 10 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 0 absent. We will indeed be hosting a city council meeting, a special city council meeting, on Monday evening, 7 PM in this council chamber. Yeah, now, with respect, that's what I was going to address, with respect to the draft in the packet.
I've made some notes
Something needs to be posted.
Something needs to be posted so that, yeah.
forward you, taking in mind a draft to start.
Sure.
Well, is it more valuable for staff, though, even if we spent 20 more minutes to tell us, to discuss this that's in front of us, because I'd hate for them to,
Well, I would argue that, respectfully, of course,
Yeah,
that
go.
as
Yeah.
policymakers, our job is to direct staff accordingly. And as we've heard our professional staff say, you set the policy, we carry it out, so I think that rests with us solely.
is that what I'm hearing from the city administrator? You'd like?
Exactly, you set policy, we follow orders.
No, I'm sorry, but I thought,
Oh, sorry.
This language.
Yeah.
I thought Alderman Bruno was talking about specific language he wants to see in it, and I'm saying,
I mean,
How
I
can
think
we-
ideally, the council would submit a draft that they want either whoever's leading the charge, that you want the rest of the council to consider next Monday evening.
And we can opine on it legally and what have you in terms of
Right.
corporate governance of NIMPA, et cetera. Yeah, absolutely.
is it better for Alderman Bruno to bring that up now, so at least he can get the temperature of the council if he sends edits to the city administrator, and next week, 8 of us say, what? That's not at all, or are we?
It'll be, are you kidding me?
I'll let the council decide. I just thought, I don't know that we want to get too deep into the weeds on this next week to be picking words on and off and stuff, but.
I think we've got a draft here to work from. I don't think we need to do any editing between now and then, unless there's a sentence or two or a word or two that somebody wants to modify. But at least from my perspective, I think we've got a draft here. And, I hope we sent these registered so we get a response. I drafted letters to all of the elected officials as it relates to local government distributive funds and haven't heard back from any of them. They haven't even acknowledged that I'd sent them a letter or an email. And I sent them a note on energy legislation last Tuesday, and I haven't heard back from one of them. So I think if we do this, I think we should send them as registered letters so that we know that they receive the communication that we're trying to convey. And again, I'm just saying, you've said that elected officials are recognized by our state legislators. Well, I haven't found that to be the case. Maybe it's myself personally. I don't know. Have any of you sent? Maybe it's because I'm obnoxious. No, I'm just saying, though, did any of you send anything as it relates to this issue between last Monday and now?
Not this issue.
Okay.
Verbally, I've spoken with you.
Okay, I'm just saying, and staff could at least say, well, thank you for your communication. We appreciate you hearing from you. Well, so be it. I'm just saying, a letter, I think we're hung up on something here that it really isn't going to make a hell of a lot of difference at the end of the day. And whether they get it in May or they get it in June, I don't think is really going to make much difference either, because if it isn't in May, I think they've all probably made their decision already where they're at on this or on one of these 5 pieces. And And what Geneva has to add at this point in time, I think, is nice, but I don't think it's going to sway anyone's decisions dramatically.
You know, to Alderman Kilberg's point, Mr. Babick, I'm not going to put you on the spot here, but I'm just referencing your name in case you want to be put on the spot. Your former superintendent, Mr. Hal Wright, myself, and I just, forgive me, I believe you were present as well when we met with then Representative Villa in Batavia. That was a year and a half ago, regarding all this legislation percolating. And our comments have been consistent throughout.
Right.
Then, of course, you have an election, then you have new people and what have you, yeah, so.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, though,
To your point, though, I agree with you. It's like-
I think we're getting caught up in the minutia here, and I think at the end of the day, I think whatever horse is out of the barn, it's probably going to run or not run, and are spending another evening discussing it and trying to fine-tune a letter that probably isn't going to carry much weight, if any weight, is probably burning our energies for a wasted effort.
It was, you're right and wrong, it was about 18 months ago, but it was with my counterpart from Batavia.
Oh, God, you guys look so
Came
much
home
alike.
and, average height about 6'8",
Yeah,
easy to mix us to.
that's right. Thank you, Rich, for setting me up there. Appreciate that. Alderman Kosrock.
For whatever it's worth, just reading some people in the audience with experience with their state legislature, they're nodding their heads that they have not made up, they're likely not to have made up their decision. So, Mr. Anderson, Ms. Paschke out there, think there is some room to maybe make an impact. I know, I said experience.
And to that point, we still have public comment coming.
Yes, Alderwoman Ruby.
Thank you. A quick procedural question.
Yes.
Last week, the three of us talked right after the meeting, and we all know it takes 3 council members to get something on the agenda, which is what we kind of did, but maybe I just had the wrong interpretation. I was expecting that we would be able to vote on this tonight. I realize that that is not the case. My question is there something what could we have done, if anything, differently so that we would be able to vote on this evening?
I believe it would probably be as simple as we submit here to a draft of a letter we'd like the council to consider sending to our legislators. I think.
So if we had done that last week, we could have,
I believe so. I believe it would be as simple as that. I mean, and you're right, 3 council members could, I mean, and you don't have to go through the formal process of, as we've seen before in this chamber, people signing, all that kind of stuff. The fact of the matter is, when you and I and Tara had the conversation, absolutely, let's continue the discussion, there's no issue whatsoever. And that's how I left it, was continuing the discussion. And I didn't know there would be a draft that would be circulated prior, all that
okay.
stuff.
Well,
So-
I guess we knew last week that time was of the essence. So that's why I expected that we would be able to vote on it this evening. So I guess that disconnect was just in our conversation.
Must be, yeah.
Okay.
If I may just clarify, it's not that you need 3 aldermen to put an item on an
No,
agenda.
not at all. To host a special
You need to
meeting.
have 3 aldermen to host a special meeting.
Okay.
You have, if you wanted to hold a special meeting that we weren't having and the mayor for some reason wasn't around to have it, you would have to have 3 aldermen signed to have a special meeting.
Okay.
As far as getting items on the agenda, like a draft or whatever, I never saw a draft. I never knew there was I didn't know that was the intent. And I don't know that anybody else knew that when we left last Monday night. And I think that was the concern, is that we left last Monday night with, okay, we've been educated, not knowing that we were then adding it again for tonight. I think that's part of the confusion.
Okay, so again, the language for future reference, if a similar situation should come up, what's the exact language that needs to be used?
I have a draft letter that I would like the council to consider taking action on.
Consider
Okay.
is an action verb, so we can consider action to be taken on, and
Okay.
whatever the case may be. And of course, it has to be posted 48 hours in advance.
Ordinarily, the way these things work, and I guess just for everybody's benefit, is if an alderman has a specific issue they want to talk about under new business, they would bring it up and say, this is what I want to talk about, this is what I want to do. Is there consensus to either direct staff or to come back next week and consider that item? So that ordinarily would have happened last week. There would have
Right.
been some kind of direction given that we were moving forward this week.
But we didn't figure it out until the day after the meeting.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. So I was just saying, so forget this particular issue. Anytime there's an issue that you want to discuss, new business is always the appropriate place to bring it up on any meeting, so that then we can make the plans for a future meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On the motion, ladies and gentlemen, we already did that.
We did that.
So, public comment, any new business before public comment?
Can I make one more comment?
Of course.
In general, I just feel like the legal opinion obviously is very necessary. I would just really want to say we would also like to get Director Babica and Superintendent Holton's opinion, I think, next Monday too, on the draft, on any implications or anything like that. I just think it's a given, but I wanted to make sure we say that out loud so that for sure we're soliciting and getting their feedback next week.
Thank you. Public comment. Ms. Dawkins, is there anyone who submitted any materials during the meeting who you'd like to read the subject line of?
So we've received 3 emails to the public comment mailbox, one from a Jeremy Paschke, vote to move towards clean energy and renewable energy. Allie Fogel, public comment, Geneva should use clean energy, not coal. And Rhonda Robinson, Prairie State issue. Those again will be printed and included in the minutes for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. Mr. McCready, is there anyone wishing to speak?
Yes, we do have one member who has their hand raised, Mr. William Scown. I will mute you now. Mr. Scown, you've now been unmuted on our end, so now is your opportunity under public comment to address City Council.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
sir.
can.
Okay. My understanding from the ICJC, the committee that is writing the CJA bill, is, timing is everything. This week, there will be votes which determine what will go into the final bill, the composite, that will eventually go to the floor for a vote, by the end of May. So our window to influence what goes into that bill really is this week. And I'm sad to see that you weren't able to reach a conclusion this evening, and would urge you to hopefully, move it along as quickly as possible and send your opinion on what you want to see in the bill, including any relief that you might want to request from the current bill as written. Now, this evening, the ICJC sent an offer basically to Batavia, Geneva, and Naperville, which offers relief on the 4 major issues that Batavia has raised that address the cost of the bill, especially the cost in transition, the fees or tax, carbon tax, the cost of decommissioning Prairie State, with an offer of providing funding of up to $25 million on decommissioning costs. The clarifying that Prairie State would be allowed to delay closure until 2030 under the declining emission caps. Speaking to the concern about debt payment continuing after the closure of the plant. There's really no viable way for the state to offer relief on the debt. However, they can offer relief on the decommissioning costs that would be over and above the debt. Relief is being offered on the issue of regulatory oversight by the ICC. And relief is being offered on being bound by the renewable portfolio standards ahead of 2030, when Batavia in particular, is required to buy excess power, excess to their needs. So the ICJC is trying to work with Batavia and Geneva, Rochelle, and the other municipal utilities and co-ops to make this bill much more acceptable and to make the cost impact quite reasonable. I look at my back of the envelope estimates of the cost impact for Geneva and see that we're now getting down to somewhere around 0.3 to 0.4 pennies per kilowatt hour on the incremental cost between now and 2030 when the plant closes. We have, of course, the analysis from RMI that the power and capacity cost after 2030, after Prairie State closes, for a clean energy portfolio is going to be less than the continuing operating costs for Prairie State. So it looks to be post-closure about a push, possibly a little less, depending mostly on how the capacity market is revised, which is in the offing, certainly in the next several years. So if you're going to carry this forward to next Monday, I would really urge the city staff to sharpen up their pencils and take a look at the cost projections to the city, including the concessions that the ICJC team is making, offering, in order to get Prairie State included in the bill. So, I'm really disappointed. I think you've missed a significant opportunity to exert influence on what's in the bill and to send the right message to our state legislators on what you and the citizens of Geneva want to see the outcome be. So please don't delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. McCready, anyone else?
No one else raising their hand at this time.
Anyone in the audience? Mr. Anderson? Then Ms. Olson? This is the guy we were singling out back there.
Well, my name was used in debate, so I thought it was only fair that I come up and say hello. I'm so proud of my city council, and I always have been. I'm not here to tell you which way to vote, because I have faith that you'll do what you think is right for our community, every one of you, using your good faith in that. So that's not my point here. I just wanted to clarify a couple things that I heard from a procedural standpoint on where you stand and where the legislature stands from my experience. One, is this thing going to pass this cycle before May 31st? I think that was your question, Alderman Craven. I apologize, Caven.
Craven, that has a whole new message to it, doesn't it, man? It's like,
there was a cool comic book character called Craven, by the way, who I liked a lot, okay? So it wasn't meant as a slight. So there's an old saying in Springfield, the odds are always in your favor if you bet no. You know, that between something happening and nothing happening, usually the safe bet is nothing's going to happen. So you're not wrong to suggest that. But that is also not a security blanket. In other words, be careful, because if you choose not to do anything and then something does happen, then you may have been left out of those negotiations. So I would just caution you that that's not a given. It could very much be cobbled together in the next 2 weeks. A lot of things happen in the last 2 weeks. Hell, a lot of things happen in the last day that probably shouldn't, but it occurs that way. So be careful about that. Number two is, as far as when legislators listen to you or not, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, Alderman Kilberg, that sometimes they don't. But right now I can tell you that the advocates on either side of this issue are cobbling together votes. And you saw my head being shooken up and down when I said, or that way, I don't remember which. When you asked, is this a done deal? The answer is it's not a done deal. Both sides are fighting tooth and neck to try to get enough votes on their side, either to kill it or to make something happen. And right now, I would suspect that you have more power now than you will ever have. Because right now, you heard it from Mr. Scone, I think, they need your representatives' votes, I think. If they can get them through compromise, through offering some relief to the Prairie State communities, I think now's your opportunity to get that. But if it turns out you guys aren't really interested or you don't make much of a statement, well, to be honest, they're going to move on, and they're going to look for other votes, and maybe they can do it without your votes. And so that window is right now, and I don't think next week I don't think it's closed next week. I don't think this thing's going to be voted on this week. I'd be willing to bet on that. So you do have an opportunity to have a disproportionate impact right now or to next week, and that letter will matter in determining that. But I'd encourage you, say what you mean in it. You can be qualified, but you can also say, look, we're a lot further down the path on being in favor of this if you can resolve X, Y, and Z. These are our unique problems. Fix them. Basically put the offer out there to them, and you might be shocked at the response that you get. So that's just, like I said, I trust each and every one of you to vote the way you should, based on your own convictions and the data and the information that you have. But just so you understand, now is a powerful time for you as a city council to make a difference in the whole milieu down in Springfield. So I suppose I should say I'm happy to take any questions, but it really is just public to address the board. So thank you.
Unless you can give us some insight on the LGDF battle.
LGDF, it's just my bet. My bet is it will not get touched. There's enough, the revenue cycle, there's been enough good money there, and they're figuring out a way to do a straw man transaction with the money from the feds so that they can use it for what they want it to. Nobody likes to touch that. I mean, everybody wants to touch it, but nobody likes to touch it because of the reaction of you all.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you, Steve.
thank you.
Ms. Olson.
Well, I'm certainly glad that I'm sitting out here and not up here tonight. I certainly appreciate the fact that you all your questions, all your concerns, all your thoughts. I have a great deal of trust in all of you and a great deal of respect for all that you do. But I also have a very strong feeling that if more people in our community understood the little bit more that I understand tonight as a result of being here, I think they would also want you to send a letter. I understand that sending a letter is a difficult thing to do because we all have different feelings about this. But I do think if you can get the verbiage correct so that all of you are satisfied with that, I do think that would be a positive thing to do so that our community knows that you as a council support the transition to renewable energy. And the fact that we are aware, that you are aware of everything that needs to happen, that 50% of our users are, 10 companies. That's very important. But I bet you that a lot of people in this community do not know that, do not have that understanding. And I think that those are important things that they need to know. But I also think it's very important that you take the opportunity to get a letter off to legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kale, how are you, sir? You're in the last row, the last one.
Good evening. This time I'll remember to introduce myself before I go running off at the mouth, but I will keep it brief. I won't get you long. I'm Bill Kale. I live in Geneva. I'm a resident here since 2016. So since my grandparents weren't born here, to all of you, I'm brand new, as is all of my family. Anyone else here whose grandparents were not born here, you are also an immigrant like I am. But nonetheless, we honor and respect immigrants in our community, so we will move ahead. I've gotten some notes here that something else was left out in one of the messages. We're very concerned about that cost. Oh, so I had this to say, first of all, is crazy and confusing and complicated as this is, I saw something insanely simple float through the air here. I can't believe it. We all want the move to clean energy, and we want some relief for Geneva when it's happening. That's like one sentence. So we have to get into the details about what that accomplishes or what that accounts for. But things like the peaker plant, I think the bill as written is at like 25 megawatts, and you could like turn off one of the turbines and you'd still be running the peaker plant. The hill is part of the natural gas burning off. That's part of a clean energy thing that's considered. That's not going anywhere. Some of that stuff was ramped up as we'd lose all that right away, and that's not going to happen, by 2050 or so. But certainly put that in the bill that these things should be clarified and concerned. And they are listening to it. I mean, they're sending people like us out there on the floors to go talk to these people, tell them, ask what they want, ask what they're not. And they're asking now, tell us what you want, because there are so many different communities. So I think I got both of those. We can get the peaker plant going, and the fact that if you say simple and focused, you've got a real hard, clear, positive, powerful message, and that can be delivered. And as Representative Anderson had said, you have way more influence than you could possibly imagine here right now. The last thing I wanted to get to, 3 or 4 other notes. I'll spare you all of that. Yeah, I wish I'd said something else. Maybe the opportunity's closed. We're good. Yeah, no, my mind went blank. Too many different notes, and they're all going 6 different ways to Sunday. It is very complicated. We will sort out someday in the future. In the short term, we have to decide whether you should act and voice something now. As Mr. Anderson had also said, we're not sure, is it going to happen this week that the legislative language will be finalized? Will it happen by close of business on May 31st? Will they have an extension, or will it go into the summer? So you get different odds of all these different kind of things happening. So you might be doing this for a long time, and it might be over a lot sooner than you think. We don't know how that will go either. But, so here, I brought it up. The one issue we talked about so much about concerns of the cost of action, if we do this, what will happen if the bill passes and we do this and we get all these taxes interfering with us. What we didn't speak about is what is the cost of inaction if we can't close down a coal plant because of the taxes. Springfield might want some money next year, and they might think, well, what about those coal taxes? We can't close down the coal plant. What if we leave it open for a couple of decades? So are we exposing ourselves to, instead of having taxes for 8 years, having taxes for 40 years? Of course, maybe they won't want the money, and that's really not a problem. Once again, you can do your own calculations and estimations on whether or not that's a worry. But just something to think about. It's not a get out of jail free to just turn this down and walk away and go back to the old days. That's not happening. What you have now is the opportunity to try to steer which way this goes. So I think I've said my piece.
Thank you.
There you go.
Welcome to Geneva.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else? No one else on the line? Alderwoman Burkhart?
Just to end on a light note, as Representative Anderson was talking about all the stuff that gets done the last week and the last day in Springfield, as I mentioned, I was a page in the Illinois House of Representatives in some summers. And as you were talking, the General Assembly used to end June 30th, the session. And I remember being there at midnight and a bill passed and somebody got up and manually moved the clock hands back so that it passed before.
That begs the question, what the hell year was that, Tara?
Yeah, it was me. There might have been a Mike Madigan in the House back then, so.
Wow.
Everything's digital now.
Everything's digital, exactly. Anyone else? A motion to adjourn this council meeting is in order. Alderman Marks makes that motion. A roll call vote would be in order. But then again, we can do voice votes, so all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay.